Hey guys, my name is Hamza, and I'm here to share my USMLE Step 2 journey because I think when I made the jump from a 235 on an NBME 9 to a 272 on the real deal, I really think that I made a lot of improvement, and that experience can really help you with your journey of Step 2. I wouldn't, make a long introduction of this video, but I just wanted to let you know that this video is going to be a little bit extended, and it's going to have all the small things that I really think that matter. And I'm going to try to cover everything from my timeline, the resources I used, the extras I used, the self-assessments, and my exam day preparation, my exam day strategy. So everything's going to be included in this one video, so I would really recommend that you watch it completely. And if somebody has something like an ADHD and they cannot watch long YouTube videos, I'm going to divide this video into a lot of timestamps so you can just jump onto the portion that interests you. So without further ado, I think I should get started. First of all, I would like to talk about my timeline because I think that is something that you should be aware of, because there needs to be a context of whatever I'm telling you. For the rest of the video, you should know how I plan things and how I was able to execute all of them. So first of all, I took my USMLE Step 1 during the end of my fourth year, and for that I will make a complete separate video if somebody's looking for my exam experience of Step 1. And then right after my fourth year professional exams, I started studying for my Step 2 exam. But an important thing to note here is that I had also applied for my electives at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center in April when I was in my final year. And I applied for the period 7, which was going to start in October that year, October 31st. So it was basically the month of November. And around the time of August, when I was preparing for my USMLE Step 2 exam, I received an email from the UPMC that I had been accepted. I went crazy after that, but it was a big thing. But anyway, I then, initially I had planned that I was going to take my USMLE Step 2 exam during final year. But since, I got that elective, I thought it would be a better idea to, get that US clinical rotation and, get that US clinical experience, because electives can really add to your CV. So that's what I exactly did. And I just went for an elective, and I just thought, I would take my Step 2 exam once I'm back from America. And then I spent the month of November there, did one rotation of 4 weeks. I rotated with 4 attendings there and got the LORs and everything, that's related to an elective. But again, that's not the topic of this video. I came back, and then I was able to, take my final professional exam. And right after I took my final professional exam, they started in like February, and then they ended in April. So from April onwards, like I took like 20 days off because my brother had come back from, he lives, outside of the country. So he'd come back home. So we were spending some time with him. It was also Eid. So I started my preparation for Step 2 again in May. And then I took my exam on July 25th. So it was May, June, and July. And this was mainly my second pass of UWorld, the time after my MBBS. I spent like 3 months doing the second pass of my UWorld. And for the first pass, I did that like in bits and pieces. When I was in my final year of MBBS, it was, throughout I wanted to attend all of the ward rotations. And obviously, you really need to do that because the medical knowledge, it's not like all theoretical. There's a lot of practicality involved there, and I really thought that to develop that clinical sense into myself, it was imperative that I did those, that I attended those ward rotations, and that is what I did. I attended all of those. So my routine during my first pass of UWorld during final year used to look something like this. I used to wake up for some of the days. I used to wake up at like 5 a.m. or like 5:30 a.m. and I would do the block of UWorld in 1 hour, and then I would leave for university. And for the days that I was not able to wake up earlier, I would go, and we had this, class from 8 to 9 in the morning at my university. And then from the time from 9 to 11 a.m., I would used to do a block of UWorld from 9 to 10. And then from 10 to 11, I used to review like at least like 15 to 20 questions, or as many as I could do at that time. Then I would go for my wards, and then I would come back home around, I would leave around 2 p.m. and then it would take me like an hour to get back home. I would come back home at 3 p.m. And afterwards I would get a nap and restart my preparation around like 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. It used to be something like this. I used to start at Asr, and then from Asr to Maghrib I would study, and I would try to just do all the questions during that time, but obviously it was most of the times I was not able to do that. And then from Maghrib to Isha, again I used to try that. I would review all the questions during that time, but again that was not something that used to happen too often. So I would end up, studying till like 9 p.m. or like 9:30. Sometimes it used to be 10 p.m. as well. But again, UWorld just keeps you on track. I knew that I just had to do one block of UWorld every single day, and that is exactly what I did. And for the times when I had my modules and like my war tests, I would just take like 3-4 days off. And I would prepare for that university exam, that specific university exam. And, that would help me just stay in touch with what we were studying at the university and also what we were doing, for the USMLE. So this was like my first pass. And for the second pass, like I said, I was home 24/7. I did not do my house job, although like my house job started somewhere around June 25th, I think. So I had like the time from April to June 25th to take my USMLE Step 2 exam. But I had never thought that I was going to do house job. And the thing is that I've always known this, that one, if somebody is not doing his or her house job here, it does not mean he can never practice in Pakistan. Basically, when you are doing your residency in the United States, the 3 years of residency that you do there, like for internal medicine, you end up getting a degree of American Board of Internal Medicine, right? So that is considered a degree that's like enough to prove to the PMDC that that person is allowed to work in Pakistan. And so it's like, think of it like as an equivalence for a house job, right? So if you get the ABIM, ABIM degree, you can definitely come back to Pakistan and work. And this is listed on the PMDC website as well. So one, it was this reason. And secondly, I just knew that with house job, it gets really hard to manage time. And, the house job in Pakistan, and I'm sure in India as well, there's more clerical work instead of clinical work. And, you're just continuously, just writing a lot of stuff. And so it wasn't something that was going to help me a lot with my step 2. If it was something like that, I would have definitely, thought about doing it. But I just knew it from the experience of my seniors and my siblings. I just knew that house job was not the thing for me. So I just took that time off, and I spent May, June, and again 25 days of July doing the second pass of my UWorld. So this was just a general outlook of my timeline for USMLE Step 2. Now I'm going to talk about the resources that I used, and I think I don't know how to emphasize on this, but UWorld during your first pass is like your Bible, okay? It's not like you can shuffle between like 100 resources at the same time during your first pass, and that's going to end up with you scoring like a 270 or a 280 maybe. That's not going to happen. You have to stick to one resource, and then you have to trust the process. You have to trust that one resource. I don't mind if it's UWorld, I don't mind if it's Amboss, I don't mind if it's Kaplan or whatever, but you have to stick to one resource. Because let's just say UWorld has 4,200 questions. That's like 105 blocks, okay? So my aim has always been to do, one block of UWorld and not more than that. So if I was doing one block of UWorld per day, and obviously I had my modules in between, my war tests in between, so I just had this thought that I would be able to cover all of that within 150 days or 160 days. So, and I was actually able to do that. I just set this goal for myself, by the end of let's say by the end of June I should be done with like 10 blocks. By the end of July I should be done with like 20 blocks. So I always had these like set schedules for me, and that really helped me out. So that is exactly what I did, and I would like, I don't know how I could emphasize more on this, but please just stick to UWorld during your first pass. That is the biggest thing you need to do, and you don't have to stick your head into a lot of resources like DFly, Inner Circle, and then people go for their step 1 UWorld and then first aid of step 1. I don't know how can you shuffle between all of these resources at the same time. So I think it's a big mistake. You should just completely stick to UWorld during your first pass and try to do only one block per day. Don't try to exceed that limit, because if you do that, you end up focusing on quantity more than quality. And step 2 compared to step 1 is something that has a lot of depth in its reviews. And I actually realized this quite early on, like those questions on upper GI bleeding. There are steps, like if this is happening, then this is what you're supposed to do. If this is happening, then this is what you're supposed to do. If you do this and the bleeding does not stop, then you have to do this. So there's like a lot of steps of management, right? So I think sticking to UWorld and then focusing a lot on the tables and the flowcharts that UWorld is providing you with. So I think that's the most like highest yield thing you can do during your first pass, and I think it's really important for you to do that. And then during first pass, if you want to review something from step 1, I think sketchies are the only thing that you should be reviewing. Like I tried to review the entire sketchy microbiology, but I did not do it. Although it would have been like very high yield to do that, but I was not able to complete it, to be very honest. And then for sketchy farm, I have not completed my sketchy farm, but for most of the topics like CNS, antimicrobials, diuretics, antihistamines, diuretics, I don't know if I said that earlier or not, but these were like the general topics that I'd done from, and they were a lot actually. As autonomic drugs, they're really important. So these were the kind of things that I was reviewing during my first pass, and I think it really helped me out as well. And I wish I had done more, because it actually ended up helping me in my step 3 exam as well. So I think you should definitely focus on UWorld and then try to review and recap the stuff you did during your step 1, but don't go into first aid of step 1, or reviewing the entire question bank of step 1 of UWorld. I don't know, a lot of people do that, and I know that. But I think this is the highest yield thing you could do. It's quite simple. Like all you have to do is like complete the first pass of UWorld. That's it, nothing else. And then if you want to review something, probably sketchy microbiology and sketchy pharmacology are the only things you need to do. Not DFly, not inner circles, or any other notes that that you think would help you. I don't really recommend them. I think UWorld is like the ultimate resource you require for your step 1, for your first pass, sorry. And then for your second pass, this is where things get tough. And I always like to compare this to your second pass of step 1. So for the second pass of step 1, it was like just UWorld and then self-assessments, right? But in step 2, as probably all of you have heard already, step 2 has a lot of like ethics and quality improvement questions. And for those questions, I think that UWorld lacks a bit of information over there, and for that you have to do some extra stuff. So the ideal plan for the second pass of UWorld, in my opinion, goes up to like 75 to 90 days. So that's like 2.5 to 3 months. And during that time, you have to do AMBOSS, not the entire question bank, but there's this high yield section of AMBOSS, like the 200 high yield concepts that appear in every step 2 exam. There's the high yield risk factors. There's high yield vaccination and screening guidelines. And then there's a couple more topics. There's a quality improvement thing. There's this drug ad thing. So I think they're really high yield and they can really help you during your second pass of UWorld. And these are something that should definitely make up a big chunk of your step 2, of your second pass. So I think it's not like it's an optional thing. I think it's a necessity. So I think if you're starting the second pass of your UWorld and your step 2 exam, I think you should definitely focus on the AMBOSS things a lot. And the ethics in AMBOSS are actually, there are some articles for it, and then there's also questions related to those articles. So what I used to do was I would first study those articles, and then I would do the questions related to them. So it would give me, the confidence as well that I actually know something. And if I was doing, the questions first and then the articles, then, it might have just shattered my confidence that I did not know enough. So I've always tried to, get a good score. And even if, the kind of personality I have, I was always optimistic about these things. And that is something that I try to tell people as well, right? Like if you get a score of like 55% on UWorld, like from 40 questions, and you see 2 very silly mistakes that you cannot even believe, right? So what I would do, I would just replay the UL block, and then I would just mark those two options as correct, and that would increase my score to a 60%. So I'm not recommending you do that, but that's what gives you confidence. You just need to have that faith in yourself, that if you are doing something like that, it just gives you confidence. Good scores do give you confidence. So I think that's something that you can really do. Other than that, for your second pass, yeah, we were talking about that. So AMBOSS, and UWorld, obviously, you have to do 2 blocks of UWorld every single day when you are not doing AMBOSS or anything else. You always have to do 2 blocks of UWorld. And for me, I did 40% of my second pass of UWorld. So 40% is like almost like, I think, nearly like 1,800 to 2,000 questions or something like that. So I did do that, and I think it really helped me develop the skill of time management, because it's a real thing in step 2. It was much easier in step 1. I still remember for step 1, it was like there were like straight facts. Either you know that fact or you don't, and then you just move on. For step 2, it's like what the diagnosis is, but you're having such a hard time, just figuring out what the actual answer is, because there's, like I said, there's like a lot of depth into related to that information or related to that diagnosis. So that is something I think that really helps you out, like doing the second pass of UWorld. So it does help you. And then the third thing I want you to do during your second pass of UWorld is Divine, for sure. Divine Intervention Podcasts has very quick pointers that can help you get the entire questions right. Just giving those. So yeah, so Divine Intervention Podcasts are originally podcasts, right? So it actually means you're supposed to listen to them. You're not supposed to read them. But what I used to do was, Divine himself has uploaded some transcript notes of those podcasts on his own website. So what I did was, I do very bad with long videos and long audio, so I could not hear him like for such a long time. So what I did was, I would just open that, and I would just start from the top, and then he has listed like 325 episodes or something. So I would just look at the episode titles, and I would say, if something would say like episode 325, that is something that I really recommend to everybody. So I would just read episode 325, high yield screening and vaccination guidelines, and then I would just jump straight to episode 325 and do that. And like, there were a lot of surgery things. I was quite weak in surgery, so I used to review a lot of details from the surgery episodes as well. And then he had like some very high, he actually writes like high yield review or something like that. So you just jump to that episode, read the notes quickly, and then it just sits in your mind. You don't really have to listen to all of those podcasts. But again, Divine does he does mention a lot of points that really help you get the entire questions wrong, right. So I think it's really important that you do Divine as well. Other than that, I think I'm actually going to talk about the self-assessments now. So for step 2, there are these forms that are called CMS forms, and they're like your NBMEs, but NBMEs include all the subjects and systems, right? So think of CMS forms as like blocks of 50 questions made by the NBME themselves, and they relate to each subject. Like if it's family medicine, then all the 50 questions will be for family medicine. And if it's like OBGYN, then all the 50 questions will be OBGYN. So these are the forms that are available, that they can be purchased from the NBME's website. I think if you do the last 2 CMS forms for each subject, I think that's more than enough. And the farther you go, it's actually, they become a bit outdated, and the information you find there, it might look a bit weird to you. Like I remember there was this thing in OBGYN, and when I answered that question, it was like the 3rd last or 4th last form or something like that. And I thought that what I had studied in UWorld was different. So I started questioning the UWorld question bank, because that came from the NBME. But later I've just figured it out that that was an outdated form, and with continuous research, you're always looking at newer information, and the guidelines keep on changing. So that is what I did. I just did the last 2 CMS forms for each subject, and that is a super high yield thing to do. And how I used to do them was, I had set like each Wednesday for CMS forms. So I think there are like eight subjects. So every Wednesday, for 8 weeks, you would be doing CMS forms. And let's just say you wake up at 8 in the morning. You attempt one block from 9 to 10:15 a.m. and then take a 15-minute break, and then from 10:30 to 11:45 you should be done with your CMS forms, and then spend the rest of the day reviewing those forms. That is what I used to do, and I would keep medicine and surgery at the last because they are like really high yield. So you should be doing like neuro, family medicine, OBGYN, pediatrics. That they would come earlier in the early during your second pass. Other than that, I think the most important self-assessments, just like your step 1, are your NBMEs, and for your step 2, these range from NBME 9, and then there is a very new form, it's called the NBME 15. So from NBME 9 to 15 you have all those forms, but I think that NBME 9 is a bit outdated, so you don't really have to do that. So one crazy thing about the NBMEs is that a lot of people actually they don't review the NBMEs properly, and I cannot just emphasize enough on this fact that NBME is going to make your actual exam as well. And then NBME has made those forms to prepare you for the actual exam, right? So there's nothing higher yield compared to the NBME. So you have to review them thoroughly. Fine, I know that the explanations on those forms, they're quite pathetic, and it's really hard to go through all of them. But at least you should very properly do your incorrects from the NBME explanations, and that is actually I think that's one of the reasons I was able to improve from my score of 235 on NBME 9 to a score of 269 or 268 on my NBME 13. I think I used to cram the information on the NBMEs, and one way or another I knew that the previous NBME was going to hint towards a question that was going to come in the next NBME, and it actually works like that. So I think you should review the NBMEs very properly. I won't force you to do the NBME 9 because it's a bit outdated again, and people don't really get a very good score on NBME 9, so it shatters your confidence like that. So I think just start from the NBME 10. It's really high yield actually, and you should progress your way, NBME 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 and 15. Just go in that sequence, and you should do all the NBMEs for sure. And now for the UWorld self-assessments, I think you should start with the UWSA. So let's just say you've just completed your first pass of UWorld, and then now you're starting your dedicated time of your second pass of UWorld, right? What you should do is that, again, put all of your CMS forms on Wednesdays. Try to do at least 2 blocks of UWorld per day for at least 7 to 8 days before you jump towards your self-assessments. And then your first self-assessment should be the old free 120. The old free 120, so there's 2 old free 120s. One is from, I think, 2019. The other one is from 2021. And then the newer one is from 2023. It's something like that. So it's like an old free 120, an old new free 120, and then a new free 120. So you should just do the old new free 120 and the new free 120. I don't really like the idea of people when they get stuck on their free 120 scores. I don't really think they're really predictive of anything, but you should definitely be doing 2 of these free 120s because they actually help you. Again, they've been designed by the NBME, right? And they've been designed by the team of USMLE. So anything that has been designed by them, we need to go through that because that exposes us to more questions, and in the end, it exposes us to more information. And I think it's really high yield that you need to do all of them for sure. And then once you're done with your old free 120, I think you should make your way to the NBMEs. Sorry, you should do your UWSA 1 first. Now, UWSA 1 is an exam. I don't know why, but the UWSAs throw a lot of people off the track. And for me, it was not like that. The UWSA 1, the UWSA 2, not the UWSA 3, but UWSA 1 and UWSA 2 went really good for me. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but the UWSA 2 is considered to be the most predictive of your scores. And I've actually seen this a lot. People would be getting a 260 on UWSA 2, and they would be getting either a 259 or a 261 or a 260 on their actual exam. For me, it was I scored a 264 on my UWSA 2, and then 264 or 262, and then in the real deal, I was able to score 10 points more than that. I scored a 272. So I don't know, but again, it gives you a very good idea of what your progress is and where you lie on that curve. And then so it's old free 120, UWSA 1, some NBMEs, the UWSA 3, some NBMEs, the UWSA 2, and then finally you should take the NBME 14 and 15 after you do UWSA 2. And the reason for that is, again, NBME designs those real exam questions, right? Not the not the team of UWorld. So I think more exposure to the NBMEs, they just prepare you for the exam, and just think of it as like a mock exam for the NBMEs. So I think you should be doing the NBMEs in the end, not the UWSAs. And then finally, you have your free 120 exam, and free 120 is something that you just cannot miss here. I actually dropped my score a bit on the free 120. I scored a 74, 75%, and I still got a good score on the real deal, which again should give you the confidence that your free 120 scores do not really matter. And it's about getting exposed to those questions. Obviously, again, like I said, if you get like a couple of silly questions wrong, just consider them right, and it really helps like that. And then finally, I think I should talk a little about my self-assessment scores. So my self-assessment scores were, I started with the NBME 9. It was right before my step 2. It was right before I started my second pass of UWorld. And there was a gap because I was taking my final professional exam, so I was, not actively doing UWorld. And then I just suddenly took the NBME 9 exam, and I scored a 235 on that. It just broke me. I still remember those days, that 1 week between the NBME 9 and NBME 10. I was so shook. I just could not believe my eyes that I scored so low. And I was like, oh, so in the exam, even if I improve like 10 points, I'm going to score like a 240 or a 245. And it really shattered me, because I have always put in a lot of effort into these exams. And then like 10 or 12 days later, I worked so hard. I reviewed each and every single thing on that NBME 9. And I still have my notes where, I have like pointed out my mistakes. I pointed out the mistakes of my strategy. I just, reviewed that very thoroughly. And then like 10 days later or something, when I took my NBME 10, I think I took my UWSA 1 first actually. And that gave me a score of 260. And then when I went towards NBME 10, again, that gave me a score of 260. So I think it was all about, one, the knowledge gap. I wasn't actually being too serious about the step 2 exam. And that score on my NBME 9, it actually gave me the realization that you need to do better than that. And those 10 days made a huge difference on how I used to look at my exams, on how I used to solve things. I think there needs to be like this wake-up call. If you're getting a low score, it doesn't matter. You can work on that. More than like getting your confidence shattered by a low score, it's actually just like a wake-up call that you are probably looking at the wrong direction. It's not always about having knowledge gaps. It's most of the times it's about you're doing, your stuff, and you're just not executing it the right way. And I think that's a big issue. A lot of people don't really work on their exam taking strategies. They just keep on cramming stuff, this resource, that resource, and they just keep on cramming, and they hit a point where they burn out, and then the exam taking strategy doesn't even matter to them anymore. So I think that don't just focus on your NBME knowledge, focus on how you're taking them. And from the first NBME, you have to make sure you're doing it on a timed mode. Like, even if you're doing them like offline, which I don't recommend, but I think you should just time them like you would time the actual thing. Like, you should get like 1 hour 15 minutes for those 50 questions per block, and then you should not get a break of more than like 10 or 15 minutes. You have to be in a closed room. Your cell phone cannot be in that room. And I think this all of this, it just creates that seriousness out of you. It just mimics those real exam conditions. I don't know, people are taking those exams in the library or something like that. You need to be in a closed environment. You need to have 100% focus on your exam. So I'm not saying you cannot take your exam in a library, but just try to sit in an isolated environment and try to focus on your gaps, knowledge gaps. And then when you're taking the exam, during that exam, you figure out a lot of things that you're weak in. And like, while reviewing, you can definitely check about your knowledge gaps. But when you're reading, let's just say there's a question on there's actually a lot of questions on osteosarcoma in your step 2. And then when you look at that x-ray, you're like, I've been getting x-rays, for the past 2 months, and I have not been able to get those answers right. So this just gives you something like, you need to work on your x-ray reading skills, right? It's not like you just need to focus on osteosarcoma. It might show you those like the periosteal elevation and stuff like that, but you just need to work on your general x-ray reading skills, not only on osteosarcoma, and that you realize when you are taking the exam, not when you're reviewing it. So there's like a lot of stuff like that. Like I still remember there was a question on osteoarthritis, and it went like, would you give this person acetaminophen or would you give this person ibuprofen? And I still remember, I was like, osteoarthritis is like inflammation, so you need to decrease that inflammation, so you would give an NSAID and not an acetaminophen, although I knew that you can take an acetaminophen. And so both of them, they are the right answers, but you start with an acetaminophen. So these are like some things that you just realize, reflexively. But again, you have to go that deep into your NBMEs, because again, NBME is the NBME is the organization that's going to make those exams for you, not UWorld, not AMBOS, or any other thing. You have to focus on your NBMEs. And then finally, remember that NBME scores do not lie. They just do not lie. If you're scoring low, if you're scoring continuously in your 230s, I can assure you, you're not going to go above a 240. I know this must be hard for some people to hear who've been getting low NBME scores, and they've been really motivated of how they're going to get a good score like a 250 or a 260. But guys, it does not work that way, really, unless you're using like illegal material like recalls or something like that. That's a completely different story, and I hate that. But anyway, I think you really need to work on your NBMEs, and if they're giving you a score of like 250, 260, you're really good to go. You just need to have that faith in yourself, and you will definitely do great. Just one important point about the UWSA 3. A lot of people recommend that you should not take the exam, the UWSA 3, but I personally think, again, it's getting exposed to more information, more questions, and that really helps you out. And then UWSA 3 is an exam, it's like a summary of the entire UWorld question bank of step 2. So I think it really helps, and it can't hurt you. So you should definitely do the UWSA 3. There's no point of skipping it. And like, if you're not short on time, you should definitely do it. More the exposure to questions, the better your confidence is, and the better you're going to perform in your exam. So I think that is how it works. And now I think the most important thing, the exam day experience. So on my exam day, in the morning, I was really confident. I had a great sleep, and I took some chai with me. I had protein bars, and I also had a bottle of Gatorade, because I just thought it was going to be a long day and I might need those electrolytes, right? But to be very honest, throughout that entire day, I didn't really, eat a lot or drink a lot, but I did take my chai, because that is my only, energy booster. But anyway, I think even during my last NBMEs, like NBME 14 and NBME 15, I used to take these same things during those exams, because it just gave me an idea of if there's any side effect related to that. Whenever I drink tea, it's always like I have to go to the bathroom like a little while after that. So I just wanted to check how bad was it, or if that would be a trouble during my exam. So that's what I used to do. I used to mimic the actual exam conditions like during my NBMEs, and I would eat and drink the same things that I would on the same day as well, on the exam day as well. So, and then I still remember when I was doing like my first block, I was like, I'm done. It was so hard. It was so hard. I cannot even, begin to explain that. My exam was like, I just lost all my confidence after the first block. And then I just, I took a 5 minutes break, and then I drank some water, and I was like, just don't worry about it, Hamza. The next block is going to be extremely easy, because the first one was really hard. And I came back, I sat down, and I did not know the first answer. Like, it was crazy hard, seriously. And I think that during those first two blocks, I was like, I just give up. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna score like really low, like 220s, 230s, or something like that. But afterwards, like from block 3 to block 6 or 7, I think things went quite smooth. And I think the reason is that initially I was a bit anxious, and I was like, Like I always say, I was too concerned about my each and every single question. Okay, I was actually getting a lot of questions right, and a lot of questions were making sense. But when five questions would not make sense, or I would not know the answer to them directly, I think I would just, I would panic a lot. And that was my experience during the first two blocks. But then after those 80 questions, I had just, gathered up the courage, and I was like, I just have to, get through this day. That was what I was doing, seriously. And from block 3 to block 7, 6 or 7, everything went pretty smoothly. And then I still remember that the last two blocks, they were like harder again, like compared to the rest of them. But again, I think it was quite doable. It's just that I had created a lot of panic for myself. I was really anxious initially. And even during those like last two blocks, I was like excited that it's all going to be over, the daily grind of fuel and all those things. I was just really happy that that was all going to be over. So because of that excitement, I think that again I created that unnecessary anxiety for myself, and that is why I found those questions hard. But they were like quite doable again. So I think it's all about having courage and not becoming too anxious and not too excited. Like for my first two blocks, if I had maintained my composure, I think I would have done even better. But just remember this, guys, out of the 8 blocks, I can assure you that you're going to get like at least 3 or 4 blocks that are going to be really twisted. They're going to throw you off, but you just have to maintain your composure and know that the rest of the blocks are going to be easy. If they're all hard, like all of the blocks are hard, then they are hard for someone else taking the exam as well, and the curve is going to become lenient. And if it's like super easy, that's the bad thing. If it's super easy, the curve is not going to be too lenient. So if you're getting the easier questions wrong, you're going to lose a lot of points. But if you're going to get the harder questions wrong, you're not really going to lose a lot of points, because they're hard for everybody else as well. Like if you are getting an osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis question wrong, I think that really matters. You should be concerned about that. But if you're getting some syndrome, like I don't know what syndrome, but like if you're getting a hard question wrong, it does not matter. Okay, and you should maintain your composure at any point. If something's hard at this point, it's going to be easier in the next block. If it's not, it's going to be easier in the next block. And if it's like all the exam is hard, then it's going to be really lenient for you. So you just need to have that faith in yourself, and you will do just fine. And then when I actually came back home, I went out with my friends on that night because I had to leave for America the next day for my observerships in step 3. Um, I think for the first time in my life, I almost cried. And I did not cry because I was emotional that my exam is over. I was crying because I thought that I messed it up really bad. And the next 2 weeks were like complete torture for me. I still remember that feeling. It was throughout my flight. It was like 24 hours long. I could not sleep a single minute, and I just all of those questions, they were just, I would keep on recalling them. They were like, I was like, I have messed it up, and then I don't know what to say to others. Like when my family used to ask me like, how did your exam go, I would just I would say just result batayega. Like I can only know better if the result comes out. So you guys will see about that. So I don't know. It was like there were like a lot of mixed emotions after that, and I was glad that it was over. But I was really anxious again, and I was crying a lot over it. And then 2 weeks after that, on a Wednesday, my results came out, and it was actually like unbelievable. I cannot even explain that feeling. I was on an observership. I was doing that in Oklahoma City, and I was living in a rented place. So it was an Airbnb sort of place. So I woke up in the morning, and I received this email that your results are out. And I was like, at like 7 a.m. in the morning, or it was like 6:30 a.m. And I was like, is this early how the result is supposed to be out at? And I suddenly, I had those palpitations, and I just ran to the bathroom. I did wuzu, and I was like, I went straight to prayers, and I was offering my Fajr prayers, and I was like, God, just please just give me a good score this time, and I will never ask you for anything else. And it was like, so I knew that the result was out, but I was just, unnecessarily delaying it. And then finally, I just gathered myself up, and I was like, up to ho gaya. So I just went to the backyard, and I just opened up my result and it downloaded it as a PDF. And then all I had to do was click on that PDF, and I clicked on that PDF, and it said a 272. That was like, I could not believe my eyes. The 72 is like the 7 was a little cut from the top. So I thought, am I sure it's a 272? It's not a 212? And it was a 272, and I just could not stop crying. I called my mother, I called my brother, I called my father. I made a lot of calls. It was an amazing experience, but the effort that went behind it, again, that is quite unexplainable as well, and it was a lot of effort, and I'm really glad. The bad thing about step 1, step 2, and step 3 is that a lot of people make a lot of effort, probably more than I made, and they don't really get good scores. And it's not because they don't do good on the exam day. I don't know, it's just some sort of luck. And there's people who study a lot, who work on their exam taking skills, and then they end up getting scores like 220, 230, and somewhere around that mark. So I just think that there's a lot of luck involved, but don't let your scores break you. You're much more than your scores. Remember that whenever you're applying for the math cycle, it's a very holistic review. I'm not saying that scores are not important. I'm just saying that scores are not the only thing that define you. You have your electives, you have your observerships, you have your volunteer experiences, you have your research experiences, you have recommendations, you have your personal statement, you have your work experiences. So there's like tons of other things. Score is not the only thing. And you should be aware of that. Only if you're aware about all of these things, only then you can, just let that fear out of yourself. Like, I need to get a good score. And the more you run after your scores, the lesser you're actually going to score. You know why? Because you start second guessing yourself. And how do you do that? Whenever you're looking at an option, you know that the answer is Charlie, but you're definitely going to just think about it. Oh my god, I just cannot get this one wrong, and then you're going to end up picking some option like alpha or delta, and you're going to kill yourself for it. You knew the answer and you still got it wrong. That's the worst thing that can happen to you, right? And I just think in the end, it's much more than about just being about scores. So you should just know that and let the fear of scoring high not bother you. And then finally, there is this thing called pool change. And I was actually the first batch after that pool change. And suddenly, we had heard that USMLE had changed all the questions on the USMLE. And a lot of people, they got so frightened, and they literally started canceling their appointments out. And I was like, no, man, I have studied, and it's the same USMLE that's going to test me on it. So I just went in and I took my exam. So if you have like done your first pass of fuel, and then your second pass of fuel, and you have done all the self-assessments, and you've done all the CMS forms, I think you have got absolutely nothing to worry about, even if you're scoring a 230. Even if your AMBO score prediction is 220, just remember, it's not, the pool change won't hurt your scores. It won't, because it's the same exam. It's just being tested differently. It's going to test you on the same concepts, and they have to do that to just tackle this very bad issue of people who are doing recalls. If something's illegal, you cannot just justify that. It's okay to share some stuff with that. But again, they're just going to test you differently about the same concept. So you just need to have that faith in yourself that you've been through the process, and all you have to do is just go to the exam and take it. That's all. You don't have to worry about your scores. And then finally, I think I would just list my NBME scores and my self-assessment scores. I'm going to do that on the it's a screenshot from AMBOSS, and I also want to say AMBOSS prediction was quite accurate, so definitely you should use that. Don't be shy of visiting that website, because a lot of people are like, we don't want to know how much we're going to score. We don't want that prediction because it just scares us. But I think it's about having a genuine idea of how much you're actually going to score. So definitely you should check out your AMBOSS prediction. And I think this brings us to the end of our video. These are some things that you should take care of. But guys, again, the crux of this video is just please don't run after your scores. The more you run after your scores, the lesser you are actually going to score. Thank you so much.